The Next Generation Action Network felt it was important to have a critical conversation to make sure and ensure that we educate people on what is currently going on, how to organize, and what to expect from your federal, from your state, and all the way down to the local level, right? So today, y'all, I wanted to make sure that I brought a wealth of knowledge to our in-person and virtual listeners. And I tried to put a panel where I felt like if it was some people that I wanted to talk to and wanted to find some information from past, present, and current, these three individuals are individuals that I will call and talk to and just discuss, right? From not only the civil rights movement, but just historical, from just a legal perspective, from a political insight perspective, and just a cultural perspective as well. So tonight's discussion will be, where do we go from here? It also has our general counsel, Attorney Kim T. Cole, who is a national civil rights attorney who have represented cases, Crystal Mason, a number of national and local cases here in the Dallas-Fort Worth community. Also, Dr. Curtis King, the founder of the Black Academy of Arts and Letters, and a person who has dedicated his whole life to the culture, the history, and just the overall enrichment of our people. And so I definitely want to thank him for coming here today. And then Reverend Dr. Michael Waters, who is a pastor, professor, author, and an activist for here in Dallas, but not only here in Dallas, but a national figure. And one of the things I love about Dr. Waters is he's one of the few people in Dallas that that is around that was actually here when NGAN first started, right? And so he was at some of the original protests. I don't even think NGAN had a logo when we was doing the protests yet. It was just a hashtag at that moment, right? But a person who understood just that journey from our organization perspective. So I just wanted to just open up and just go through the panel, just to introduce themselves and just, go from there. You good?
I am Attorney Kim T. Cole. I am a civil rights attorney as well as general counsel of Next Generation Action Network.
Mm-hmm. So real quick, I wanted to basically, Dr. King, I messed it up.
Curtis King, founder and president of the Black Academy of Arts and Letters.
Mike Waters, pastor of Abundant Life in Great Island Temple, AME Churches.
So I'm gonna start off real quick. Who gonna give me the first shot? How messed up are we right now in this country? Just from just a political overview, just like how you felt on Election Day, November 5th. Just tell me. Dr. King, you feel like you want to go first?
Well, I have to go first.
Yeah.
But anyway, let me just say this. First of all, I'm from the South, a little town called Coldwater, Mississippi, which I know most people don't even know where that is. It's like, you know where it is?
My grandmother's from Coldwater.
You are kidding.
I'm not joking.
What's up, homegirl? All right. Almost. Right. But it's like 50, 25, 30 miles south of Memphis, Tennessee. And so my father was involved in the civil rights movement. My mother was in the civil rights movement also. And so a lot of this stuff is not new to me. I want to say that I was hopeful, but I was not really surprised. Worked very hard to make sure that certain things happen. I think we go wherever we're supposed to go. History has a way of repeating itself. And I was just talking to Pastor here. One of the things that, I'm not disappointed because I think as a people, we have a kind of resilient spirit that somehow, like Maya Angelou said, we still rise. We still rise. So I'm very hopeful. I'm excited. The election didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to turn out, but it is what it is. And probably shouldn't say this, but I will say it. if I were in the situation with someone who doesn't look like me, and people who have pretty much taken or stolen or done all these things in the past, and you talk about let's make America great again, that's always interesting statement to me. What do you mean make America great again? This is something about that statement. So coming up in the South, studying from a great writer, Margaret Walker Alexander, who always say, it's not what the words say, but it's what the word really means, what's behind the word. So actually, we just have to continue to keep working. You know, it's the ancestors, they've given this to us to do the work that we're supposed to be doing. So every morning I wake up, I thank God that He's given me the strength and the courage to stay healthy, be strong, and continue to do the work because I love looking in the mirror to look at myself.
Dr. Waters?
Well, thank you, Minister Alexander, and delighted to be a part of tonight's conversation. To answer your question, I think that the near future holds a great deal of harm for our community. And that's unfortunate to say, but I think it's true. I'm a hope-filled person, pragmatically hopeful. I believe in inaugurated hope, not just a hope to come, but a hope right now. I believe we could be hope dealers working in community and with God to bring about hope. But if this administration only does half of what is proposed to do, there's going to be great harm all across this nation. When you think of the proposals of engaging with the U.S. military in rounding up our Latino brothers and sisters, as well as the unhoused community, placing them in some type of detention camps and moving them outside of the country. When you think about who has been nominated to be a part of his cabinet, and literally a man who has a white supremacist tattoo on his body has been nominated to be our defense secretary. When you just go down the line, there's a great deal of harm that will happen. One of the things I often say is that white supremacy comes with a body count. And unfortunately, I think that we're going to see some bodies mounting over the course of these next few years. And so I think we have to look very clear-eyed about this moment and what it really means. This has to be a time of resistance. It has to be a time where we demand human flourishing and are willing to be courageous even in the midst of the fight. But there's a reason why Donald Trump has been named an existential threat, not only here in America, but globally. It's because he deals in death-dealing policies and has been given carte blanche opportunity, in really sense, to do whatever he wants to do. When you look at the court decision, and Attorney Coles will certainly inform and help us with this, but the Supreme Court has said basically you can do whatever you want to do when you have the support of Congress. And it looks like you'll have very little pushback, certainly in the House of Representatives. There's a lot that can happen. And unfortunately, I think we're going to bear the brunt of a lot of that harm.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. One of the things that we've been trying to give a lot of just knowledge about is people understanding. And I've just been trying to tell people like, hey, you ain't got to make it very complicated, right? We're just going to go back to the basics, right? And I'm going to take you back to that class that you didn't pay attention in, and it was called government, U.S. government, right? And I'm just going to break this down because the first chapter of that U.S. government book, it talked about the co-equal branches, right? You know what I mean? And I think sometimes people don't fully understand when someone says co-equal branches, right? You know what I mean? And so I just be trying to get people to understand that when they start trying to understand it. He has the judiciary.
Right.
He has the legislative branch.
Right.
And of course, we know he has the executive branch. And how do those branches function with each other? Kim, I want you to be able to just unpack this because one of the things I've been trying to get people to understand is the powers of the judiciary and what is, and when people hear this thing called interpret the law, I don't think people fully understands the full powers of the judiciary. And I remember my government teacher told me that he believed that out of every co-equal branch, that the judiciary branch of the executive, the whole tree, is probably the most powerful one. You know what I mean? Just because of its power in its broadness of power. Because at the end of the day, you get to a certain level, who overturns the Supreme Court, right? You get what I'm saying? No one, no other power can, other than codifying it into law, right? But we know that even codifying or putting something into law, we just gotta think the halfway of an anti-lynching bill in just a couple of years ago. So that's a long time to codifying something and actually agreeing on something other than what's given into the Constitution. So just tell us, like, just from a standpoint of like civil rights legislation, key landmark decisions that are currently at stake. We know we saw affirmative action. We saw Roe versus Wade. We saw a number of just different stuff kind of really play its course. And we know there are a number of lawsuits that are making its way up the courts, like a lawsuit that many people are buzzing about that might challenge Brown versus the Board of Education and change the way that we look at it. But at the end of the day, we wait to see that. But just tell us just like the powers and the fullness of the judiciary.
So obviously, I think anyone who's had an introductory level civics course knows that we have the three branches of government: the legislative, the executive,
Everybody don't know.
and the judiciary. So everybody knows what the president does. But I will say
Everybody
this.
don't know.
I didn't get to tell how I felt after the election, but I was, I won't say I was surprised. I was kind of shocked because you have a educated sister who, was attorney general and vice president against Trump. To me, it's indicative of how our system is. But I was disappointed, and was on a call with a group of Black women, some of whom are our parents' ages, and they were very dejected and very, very kind of heartbroken. And it took me a few days to kind of, be like, okay, all right, this is where we are. And I think for anyone that is present in this moment, we were built for this time, and we will rise to the occasion. So whatever it is, come what way, because we have survived everything that life has thrown at us, from the transatlantic slave trade to being enslaved for hundreds of years to where we are today. And so for those of us who are present in this moment, let's rise to the occasion, because I do believe that we are at risk. As you mentioned, the courts play a major role. Our system was set up to be a system of checks and balances. One branch can keep the other in check and kind of keep everything together and keep everything harmonious. And typically, the judicial branch is kind of the last stop. Obviously, the legislature makes the laws. A dispute arises, and someone challenges the law, and it goes through our judiciary system. And up to this point, the system has worked as it was designed. The Supreme Court interpreted the laws, and they make the determination as to whether or not the laws should be upheld. And so up to this point, the system has worked, and we now have a rogue, unbalanced Supreme Court. which brings me a lot of concern because I have on my Howard sweater today. The very first class I took at Howard School of Law was statutory interpretation, where we learned terms like res judicata, and which means the decision is adjudicated, let the decision stand, and stare decisis, which means let the decision stand, and res judicata is the matter has been judged. So they're not supposed to touch cases that have already been decided, like Roe v. Wade, like affirmative action, that we hadn't seen them disturbed in 50 years. And so for them to now backtrack, we don't know where we stand, like you said, as far as Brown versus Board of Education. Obviously, the Civil Rights Act of 1965 will be under attack because the person who wrote the chapter in Project 2025 with regard to the EEOC has now been appointed to be over that.
Can you say that again? Say that part again, that last part.
Oh, the individual who wrote the chapter in Project 2025 with regard to the Department of Labor and the EEOC has now been appointed to fill that position, or slated. Obviously, he can't appoint anybody until he actually takes office, but he's slated to fill that position. And so they will be looking toward dismantling that system, which obviously came about due to the Civil Rights Act of 1965, which means obviously the EEOC gave employees the right the Civil Rights Act of 1965 made it illegal for employers to discriminate on the basis of race, religion, gender, and later came sexual orientation. I mean, it expanded. They did not have the right to not hire someone or to fire someone on the basis of their protected class. And obviously, if we see that system dismantled, then employers are free to not hire people just on the basis that they're female, or just on the basis that they're black, or Asian, or Muslim, or whatever their particular prejudice is. Employers will be free to discriminate openly. And so that's what we're looking at. I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but it appears at this point, given that I handle EEOC cases, right? I represent people who have experienced discrimination in the workplace, and typically we go to court and the case is decided, or we settle. Most of them settle before it ever goes to trial, or either the court kicks it out before it goes to trial. But typically the way it goes, you go to trial and receive a judgment, and obviously if there's an issue, you can appeal all the way to the Supreme Court. And now that the Supreme Court is rogue, what do we think they're going to, they're going to uphold? Are they going to stand on the side of the aggrieved worker, or are they going to side with this new, well, it's not new. Let me say that, because the system is always, these individuals have always been in play. They just haven't been in power. And now that they are empowered in every single branch of government at this point, we have a problem.
Great. Pastor Waters, she brought into the conversation about Project 2025. I was going to wait a little bit to actually get into that, but since it was brought up, I'm just going to bring it because, I saw so many people on social media acting like people was using Project 2025 as a weapon, right? Like us exposing it, talking about it, was only using this as a fear-mongering tactic, right? But the reality is that many of us as organizers know that these things have been in play for decades now, right? These games that have been overnight. I told somebody after Trump lost, this whole critical race theory movement was created. And NGAN, I remember I told somebody, after Trump got in office, that 2021, 2022, we felt like we was fighting harder than we was fighting when we was in there, just to undo some stuff, and just like literally because the attack started. And I remember when this critical race theory thing, and I remember being in my office, and I was like, what is critical race theory? What is this thing? Because, of course, I know that there was a rigorous study that was in law school that was
I
never
took
used.
critical race
Yeah,
theory.
that was never used on this side of heaven. Okay, and I was like, what is that? I ain't never heard of the term, right? But then I started to go and respond to some of these school board meetings that they were going. I remember Mansville. I went to Colleyville, Grapevine, where they literally had a man that had a campaign that was basically funded by the Texas Policy Foundation. And this man had $100,000 to stir chaos in the school boards in Plano ISD, Grapevine, Colleyville, and he got an African American principal fired just because this principal sent an email during George Floyd and whatever it may be to create an inclusive society. And literally this man went after them. Now I say, and I bring up the Texas Policy Foundation, the actual former president of Texas Policy Foundation around that time was also the person that is the executive director of the Heritage Foundation that created Project 2025. And so literally these people are interconnected in everything that they're doing, right? And then when we unleash who is funding the Heritage Foundation, right? And knowing that this is heavy Donald Trump donors, right? Pastor Waters, I know you've been on the front line, you've been across this country doing different things and just talking about, and I think there's nobody that speak eloquently about past, present, and just indifferent, and just the future, right? And just tell us the full impact of Project 2025 and the erosion that it brings to just a lot of the legacy things in the civil rights movement, period.
Unfortunately, it's a white supremacist manifesto. It's a playbook for how to once again codify white supremacy across the country. It has roots from the Southern strategy. You really need to think about this as a movement that begins on the heels of the civil rights movement and of its accomplishments. And ever since that time, there's been a movement to unravel and to take away whatever progress has been made. And that's what Project 2025 is. It is a new vision, well, not necessarily new. Let me rephrase that. It is bringing forth an old vision for America and seeking to reclaim that vision in present time. That idea of "Make America Great Again," that slogan, when you interrogate it, when you really think about what that is talking about, it's about returning to yesteryear. And what were the realities of that? Well, it was not an inclusive politic. It's a reality that is based on segregation. It's based upon white supremacy in all of its functions, right? And really, it is about white rage and white fear. I'll say this because I think it's very important to say, is that when the Atlantic magazine did a study of who was at the insurrection in Washington, D.C. on January 6th of 2021, they found one unifying factor, right? Some people thought that the individuals who came to D.C. may have come because they were from the South. Well, no, there were people from the East, from the West, from the North. They thought, well, maybe there was some differentiation in terms of educational level. Maybe these are blue-collar workers. No, there were doctors and attorneys and surgeons who were there at the insurrection. The one thing that they found that unified the majority of these persons who came is that they lived in areas in our country that were facing a demographic shift, right? That was the thing that drew them to the Capitol, right? Not make America great again. It's really make America white again. It's about making whiteness normative in a browning society. And the reason I think it's particularly harmful today is that America is getting ready to get a taste of what apartheid looks like, right? That's what's going forward. The politic in Mississippi, the reason the fight was so strong in Mississippi was that the numbers were always on the side of the black community. And so, as was true for South Africa, as was true for Mississippi, the level of violence levied at black people was commensurate with the numbers being so high. The idea is if the black community ever gained political power and authority, they could be recasting and recreating a society, hopefully that was more equitable and celebratory of their humanity. We're getting ready to see that in America. All the numbers suggest, even with these efforts they're talking about in terms of removing immigrants from our society, all the numbers suggest that within this century, minorities, and we'll always put that in quotation marks because globally speaking, we're not a minority. But even in this country, minorities will no longer be the minority. And that is a terrifying thing for people in power, right? So Project 2025 is this white supremacist manifesto to put the levers to move it in the direction that moves us away from inclusivity, from an expanding rights. We've been expanding rights throughout our nation's history. Now we're trying to reverse them. And it's a terrifying thing. But I think it's important to recognize that these efforts have been happening for decades.
Yeah.
We did not just get here. No, they didn't just write this yesterday, right? This has been the playbook. And finally, the time has come, if you will. Things have aligned to where you have a full deck of cards. You have a president, you have a judiciary, you have a Congress. Right. And unless the people resist, and I'll end here, there is nothing that will stop it. Congress has shown that they're not going to stop it. The judiciary has shown that they're not going to stop it. If there's anything that's going to minimize and hopefully turn away the harm that's to come, it's going to be the resistance of the people.
Well,
Correct.
can I just say something?
Yeah.
I think Pastor is correct. I think for me, if this is something that we've studied the pattern and we've known about it all along, then it seems to me that as a people, and I'm not talking about minority, I'm talking about black people now, black people, African Americans, that we should be looking at how we strategize in our own communities, whether it's in the arts or whether it's in law or whether it's in politics or whatever it's in, that we should be looking at specific kinds of things. It's something that Pastor and I were talking about a few minutes ago. Martin Luther King said that he was talking to Harry Belafonte one time and said he was looking down and Harry asked King, said, "What's wrong, Martin?" And said, Martin, they were talking about integration, and said, Martin King said to him, "Harry, I'm afraid that I've led my people into a burning fire." Yeah. And when you look at that then, this was what, 35, 40 years ago. So if you got somebody who is as renowned, who is saying that about integration, that was our cue, our wake-up call, that all of us should be doing something. I believe that people who don't look like me, they're in for a rude awakening. The difference at this time is during the Johnson administration, when Lyndon Johnson, when he sent the National Guard to the South to deal with all the stuff that was going on, things like that. What did we have to fight? We had our hands, we had rocks, we had bottles. So now you come up with stand your ground. So I want people to understand something. When you say that stand your ground is for somebody else who doesn't look like me, you need to understand that stand your ground is going to also mean that people who look like me are going to be very well prepared. Now, it'll be sad that the country that we built to my people in general. All of us have been a part of this beautiful country that we built. So do we want to make a country a bloody war? Because I will tell you, coming from the South, I don't care how many white hoods you have on, I don't care how many black hoods you have on, I don't care how many gray hoods you have on, nobody in this day and time is going to put up with that. One, it takes one tweet to hit 1 million people worldwide to get our voice and our narrative out. 35, 40, 50 years ago, we had to deal with newspapers, magazines that they created, control the narrative. That narrative is not controlled by newspapers, magazines, and television, things like that. We got all these avenues now. So it behooves, in my opinion, all of us to get along with each other as human beings. I think. You know, I'm going to say this. I said this to a group of, there was a group of white gentlemen and one white female. And we were sitting at this table, and we were talking about issues and economic issues, political issues, things like that. So I leaned over and I said, why is it that you all don't like us? Why is it that you don't like us? And they looked, and this is what I said. My mother, who didn't have a bra, she had a sack around her breast, pulled it down, put her breast in your child's mouth, and nurtured your baby, pulled the sack back up over her breast, went home, and used that same breast to nurture her own child. And you don't like us. So the white gentleman said to me, well, Curtis, I don't feel like that. I said, good. If you don't feel like that, then you should go to your white counterparts and share the story with them so that there can be a change while we do the same thing in our own communities. Then if we do that, perhaps we can have some level of humanity as human beings so that we're all not slaughtering each other like cattle. The reality is that the world is vast. It's great. It's incredible. America is a beautiful place. The world is a beautiful place. God created it like that. And so my thing is that, you know, I will fight until the day I die. I'm from the South.
She know where you're from now.
We live by Coldwater. And the deal is that I saw sign that says for colored and white only.
Yeah.
I was a kid when King walked down 51 Highway in Mississippi. When black people sing, I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. They weren't just singing the song. They were singing the experience. And there's a difference. As black people, what we need to do, in my opinion, is we need to go back to that experience and be protective of our own communities. And my grandfather said, and I'll be done, when you have your hands out, you say, pay me what I've earned and owe no man nothing. So nobody's begging anybody for anything. You know, our hands are blood in the soil. We want to be neighbors and good servants and stewards of an America that we have helped to build. You know, that's what history is. And so my thing is that in the work that I do as an arts institution director is to be able to teach the people in my community. And if the people in my community learn the language, then you share that with everybody else so that we can become civil as human beings on this planet.
Yes.
That's what I really believe. And I do think that we have those possibilities to do that. I don't care what color we are. I don't care how much money we have. Because one thing somebody told me, one of the richest people in the world is one of the richest people in the grave is Steve Jobs. Jobs, I mean. So it don't make no difference how much money Elon Musk has. The reality is that he's going to die one day. And I want to see Elon Musk put all his money in the grave with him. It ain't going to happen. So I really believe in the possibilities of the humanity of the world that's been given to us. And we all can coexist here. COVID taught us one thing, if it didn't teach us anything else, to coexist together as human beings. It had nothing to do with color. It had nothing to do with money. It didn't have to do with rich, white, or whatever. One thing I do like Donald Trump, what he said. And I'm going to say that one thing is he was in the what you call the room, with the press room, and he was talking, and so they said, Mr. President, you talking about all these things you want to do. This is when he was president before. All these things you want to do. Where you gonna get the money from? He said, we'll just make more.
And I'm glad
That
you,
is true. We just do what?
we just make more, right? and so and at the end of the day, China is the currency manipulator, right?
Right.
Okay, and so like I tell people all the time, I'm very big on really history, right? And I always say, hey, we got to get back to the basics, right? We got to get back to the basics where it used to prioritize us and people of color and just in general, just back to the grassroots of the movement. Because the reality is that when we look at these challenges in the courts, we look at these laws and all this type of stuff or whatever, it's kind of like the quote that they said, we're not outnumbered, we're out organized, right? And so we unpack that word, right? We're not outnumbered, we're out organized, right? The reality is that it could never be a fair election when yet you have a governor that touts himself off of purging 1 million people off a voting roll 3 months before an election, right? So that those 1 million people could not be able to go, right? When we have voter suppression tactics that are going across the country trying to make it hard for people to vote, right? And then also I always tell people all the time, man, we, you know, and you know, I'm a registered Democrat and you know, I try my best, but this is one thing that the difference between, I just think about the Republican Party and versus the Democratic Party, is that, you know, I would say the Republican Party talks about they want to do, you know what I mean? And then when we talk about the stuff we want to do, we be like, okay, what are we talking about here, right? Why are we not wanting to talk about racism and bigotry when we have a whole plan that is being launched by the Heritage Foundation that is literally going after literally people of color? Like when it's literally asking for a mass deportation, when it's literally justifying the actions of what Donald Trump did when he had babies locked up in cages and the separation and it speaks about this. It start talking about the dismantling of things and provisions that we got in housing. It started, you know, the Fair Credit Act, all these different things that people don't even know that somebody fought, died, and sacrificed on. And one of the things that they do to us is they kill us with the education, right? So that we don't know what it is, right? Why do they come after critical race theory? Why do they come after our history and call it critical race theory? Why do they do that? Why do they create this movement where people are scared to say DEI? Like, tell me when diversity, equity, and inclusion became a bad thing. You know what I mean? And I got black people talking about we don't want to talk about that. No, we're gonna talk about that today. You know what I mean? Like, why have our people sacrificed so hard? And then we act like this country has like actually hit the benchmarks. You know what I mean? It's had goals when it comes to black people and brown people, but it's never really reached that benchmark, right? And now we're talking about it not even reaching that benchmark, but we're going backwards now, right? You know what I mean? We're finna go all the way backwards. So when you see Donald Trump say we're going to dismantle the entire Department of Education, and when some of the most calls that we get in NGAN is somebody being discriminated against in these schools. And when we don't have no apparatus to actually have somebody appeal and look into this situation and actually put a voice to Title I and Title IX, then guess what? Your kid, if you living out there and prosper and all that type of stuff, you better come on back here in the inner city, because, you know, and them people is not gonna play with your black children or your brown child. And that's just the reality that we're living in, right? It's a sad one, but that's the reality that we living in. Kim, you've been an attorney for a number of years, have saw, we've saw cops where it was hard to get a cop indicted. We saw where it was hard to even get a court date on a cop or anything. It just any accountability structure, right? Just drop the ball from the. What do you feel, and just unpack what it means when you have a person that now is somebody's president, say that I want to give full immunity to the police officers?
That's a lot to unpack. Obviously, we have seen police overreach for decades. I mean, for decades. Obviously, it from slavery to what we now know as the modern system of policing in this country, we have seen police misbehave. And up until this point, we finally had a few rulings through the court system that held law enforcement accountable for their overreach and for violating citizens' rights. And if people think that these violations will only extend to folks who look like us, they are sadly mistaken. Because I will say this: we've seen white people get killed by law enforcement, have we not? We've rallied those causes.
Yep.
We've seen Hispanics folk get killed by law enforcement. Obviously, we've seen many black and brown people get killed by law enforcement, and obviously, be due to the demographics, there are actually numerically more white people killed by law enforcement, but statistically, as far as the percentage of population, there are more black and brown people. So if they think that it is not going to apply to the masses, it will. And that's a very daunting thought for law enforcement to have absolutely no accountability. If we've all been to the store and we've seen kids running around, pulling stuff off the shelves, and you just know that, okay, they ain't getting no kind of discipline at home because they're out here running amok, causing, tearing up stuff, causing a ruckus. So imagine, that's how I think about law enforcement without accountability. I mean, without any kind of discipline, there's no accountability at all. And so for them to not be held accountable for violating citizens' rights, and that came about by court decisions as well.
Correct.
The Monell decision is what held municipalities responsible for the actions of their officers. Once again, I thought, and I think we all had gotten to a place. We saw a black president, y'all. We done made it. And we in the White House, so we got comfortable. And this is a stark reminder that our rights are not absolute. We have no guarantees, and so we have to stay mindful and we have to stay vigilant about justice. And given in this system here in America, obviously we seek justice in the courts. Minister Alexander can attest to this. The night Donald Trump was elected the first time, we were outside, it was drizzling. And I told him, I said, this will change civil rights as we know it.
Yeah.
I told him then, what people don't understand is at this point to date, Donald Trump has appointed about a third of the appellate bench in this country. Let's say he hasn't appointed people who aren't about administering justice. Our court system supposedly was about the administration of justice and making sure that this system of checks and balances we have, that this system of laws, rules, and regulation stays on track. Now we have a system being put in place, an entire playbook to overhaul the entire system to favor a particular race. This is problematic, and it is quite a stark realization that we very well may be looking at this system being dismantled and going backwards to when certain parties perceive it as being great, when, you know, you could whip us with whips and put us in chains and you know, have us tending your fields and your babies and nursing your babies, you know, and have absolutely no rights in this country. And that doesn't just apply to folks who look like us, because let's remember, it wasn't that long ago that women didn't have the right to vote.
But you know, let me throw this in.
Yeah.
Don't you think, though, that, you know, I'm an optimist. I believe, first of all, there's no way, you know, in the Bible talk about Nicodemus, how can you, like, when you come out of the mother's womb, how can you go back again? It's impossible. They can do, people can do all this stuff, you know, that they want to do. When Pharaoh, Moses led the people through the water, you know, when we went through the Middle Passage, you can do all this stuff all you want to do, but there's no way possible that you're going to be able to turn the clock back. It's impossible to do that. Let me just do this. I want to say this. One is, I think that it's interesting that people who are fearful of things being done to them because of what they did to other people.
Exactly.
Is that fear that Pastor was talking about earlier. If I were in a person's shoes and had played that playbook so long, I would probably feel the way that they feel. You know, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's what I would feel. I think the other thing in terms of law, just think about this for you, an attorney, and I know you're a good attorney, is that means that all the attorneys out here, so you're going to reshape the whole legal system with all these great attorneys out here that's not just going to affect people that look like you. I'm talking in terms of being an African American and a woman. You got all these other people. Then you're going to have the rich, you know, like a certain ilk of wealth, you know, maybe in the Republican and or the Democratic Party. So now you got all these people fighting each other, you know. So one thing I thought had been really fascinating to me is to see black people, I'm telling you in particular, sit back and be quiet and watch systems crumble right before our very eyes that we've helped to build. And so I may not be around to see it, but I would put my life on it, that the America that you think you want to make great again might not be the America that you want to make great again.
No, I agree with that. I am an optimist as well.
I ain't.
I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful. I think that was placed, you know, especially growing up as the daughter of a Christian pastor. You know, you gotta, you have to believe in hope. However, I honestly never thought, because I was taught that once these decisions, this whole stare decisis and res judicata, I'm sure though you heard those terms tossed around when Roe versus Wade was reversed, because there were certain things when, obviously Trump had all kinds of crazy ideas, like selling Puerto Rico, just all kinds of crazy stuff. And I would be like, he can't do that. He can't do that. You just, I mean, because
You can say
the
he
way
can't.
the system is supposed to work, he can't do that.
Yeah.
And so the Supreme Court wasn't supposed to touch these old decisions.
Yeah.
They weren't. And so to me, to see there's a term in the legal industry called a slippery slope. We slide down a very slippery slope, because if you're going to overturn Roe versus Wade, if you're going to undo affirmative action, where's the stopping point? How far back are we going? Are we going to undo the 13th Amendment? I mean,
But
how far back are we going?
I think that even those before welfare, there was something else. I think that layers of dismantling something becomes something else. It doesn't mean that whatever the something else is not something that means that we have to fight for whatever we think that something is going to be.
One thing I do believe is that there will be a lot, because we don't know that life, right? Like all of my life, I mean, not, I am, my opinion about legalized abortion aside, I believe that a woman's healthcare decisions ain't nobody business but her and
Right.
her healthcare practitioner. So to me, whatever decision a woman make, and even God gives us a choice. The Bible said, I said before you life and death, and it says choose life. God gives you a choice. So who is our government? Because obviously we all have to answer to whatever higher power we answer to or believe in. So to see these rights that I've known all of my life be stripped away is, like I said, this is something I never would have, you couldn't have told me that they could, even though it's been under attack, right? But once again, the wall held, right? The dam held, because once those decisions are made, like a Roe, like a Brown versus Board, it's stare decisis, it's res judicata. These are issues that we've already adjudicated to the highest extent, right? There's no other appeal beyond the Supreme Court, and they have held. And now to see this start to crumble,
But do you think it's crumbling though? I
No.
mean,
It's
I'm just
burning.
saying.
It ain't crumbling.
No, to see cracks.
It's
You
burning.
know what I'm
See
saying?
cracks,
How
yeah.
if you see
But let
a
me say,
dam
what
and you
about
see
like
one case slip through? Okay, there goes another one. Where, like I said, because there are people, they have aligned people in this system, in the judiciary. Like I said, this was very orchestrated. This didn't just pop up today. Like the Heritage Foundation, all of these judges, they handpicked these people. There's a list that they
Right.
choose from. And so they handpicked these people and put them in place so that these decisions would be overturned to make it to the Supreme
Yeah,
Court.
let me throw this at you. Let me ask you this then. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, go
I'm
ahead.
going to say ask this. One is we have different amendments, right? So the amendment is to amend the amend. And so I believe that whatever they think that they are overturn, mean that there's something else in your overturning. So it keeps them trying to overturn something that they got to keep overturning. Because I really believe this. Let me speak for myself. As a person who runs an institution and things like that, you can overturn all day long, but when you overturn, you're going to find out that what you've overturned is going to be something else that you can still have to overturn.
Yeah, there's definitely
I think
it's
to me,
layers.
yeah,
It's layers to
it's
it.
layers.
Yeah.
And I think that as a people, I really do believe that whatever it is that we have to study those practices and that whole thing about make America great again, and whatever you think that is, if you want to believe that, that's fine. Because when you say make America great again, you also acknowledging the fact that I was a part of whatever you say the concept is to make America great again. You cannot write me out. You can't X me out. You can't dig me out. You can't throw me out. You can't do none of that.
That's what they're trying to do, though.
Yeah. It doesn't make what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
People can try anything, but it doesn't matter because one thing I do believe, I believe in the power of prayer. It's the greatest weapon that we have. I do believe that. And people can try anything, but we have the ability to be able to counter everything that people have. So do you waste all your time, your effort, and your energy to counter something? You know, okay.
No.
So my thing, I
think we're built for this, though.
Absolutely.
I think those of us who are here,
right.
those who are present, we will not go quietly into that good night.
Absolutely.
That is not going to happen. And so for those of us who are here, who are present in this moment, we were built for such a time as this. They're going to try it. Trust me, they're going to try it. And so, like you said.
Why shouldn't they if people operate in fear?
Right. That's true, and that's the whole thing. I watched a visit of a white nationalist with a young Asian man, and he was very candid about why he was supporting Donald Trump, and he said he was concerned about the dispossession of America by minorities. I'm sure, I'm aware, and I'm sure plenty of people are aware, there was a study that came out that by, I believe it was 2034, that white people would be a minority in this country. That scared them. That scared them. And I think part of it is because of the cruelty that they have put out. They're worrying about the chickens coming home to roost, right? And what Barack and God bless Barack Obama. When he was elected, the hate groups in this country, I believe the statistic was that it quadrupled or something like that. It was something crazy.
Crimes against black people increased by 40%.
And because they were afraid that we would be as evil to them as they had been historically to us, and that didn't happen. We are all humans, and we have all learned to coexist for the most part. And I believe we'll see that again. But there are a certain group of people who are afraid of, losing their numbers, and that's what's fueling the anti-abortion legislation. It's not about the babies, because if they were pro-life, they would be about things that sustain life, like health care. You think they care whether that baby eats once it's born? No. It's not about being pro-life. It's not about the baby. It's about the numbers. And they realized for the first time, I believe it was this year, they said for the first time, the Caucasian population actually shrank. Ours stayed pretty even. The Hispanic population increased, and theirs actually shrank. And that is what's fueling this movement to strip the rights away from folks that look like us, to not have us in those spaces.
But this is what I say when I'm talking to white brothers and sisters. The reality, you don't have to be afraid of us
at all.
Why would we do something to you based upon what we've already helped to build?
But is it, Dr. King, is it them being afraid, or is them being afraid of losing the power?
Both.
Yeah.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's both. What is power? Power ain't nothing but a piece of paper. That's money. That's all it is.
Right.
And my grandfather said, if you don't mind working and you got your health and a reasonable portion of your health and strength, and you don't mind working, you can always make money. That's what we've done all of our life, is made money. Pre-integration, what did we have? We had college and universities. We had cultural centers. We made great movies. We had great theaters. We had great everything.
Right.
And who came running to us to make money? It was folks who didn't even look like us.
Right.
And they took advantage of us. This had nothing to do with, we being a racist or it has to do with us being realists.
Right.
And so my thing is that when I'm talking to white people, don't be afraid of me. I'm not gonna bite you. Let's have a thing of coexist. Let's figure out what do we need to do? And I do believe in being optimist. And more than anything, I do believe in God.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you this. Be not deceived, as God is not mocked. But whatsoever a man soweth, or woman,
All right.
that shall he reap.
Yeah. Amen.
Look at him. He trying to take us to church on Tuesday.
Hallelujah.
Like I
but
said, I'm a
it's
pastor's daughter. Okay.
So
You'll
real
reap what
quick,
you sow.
You gonna reap what you
as
sow.
we kind of go through this, right? And of course, like I think that I told somebody on the radio show interview. I think that one of the biggest things for me, this is my opinion. I tell people all the time they can dispute that, they can put out their opinion. This is mine. I think that one of the reasons that we at Democrats lost is because they did not talk about the number one thing that America is going through right now. And that's a racial reckoning. It's like, unless we
we
want to talk about that.
underestimated that.
At the end of the day, I know it's people want to be uncomfortable about the situation, but that's where we're dealing with in the fullness. Every decision that is being made in America is a part of it. Down party lines. It's down by racial lines, right? And the reality is that when we unpack the things of Project 2025, and we unpack all of the things and the decisions. I also said that I felt like if it was anybody's legacy and hard work, and I always like to tie stuff back into a historical preference. If it was anybody's legacy, it's just basically being torpedoed. I thought it was the late great Thurgood Marshall. Just some of the key landmark decisions
Right.
that and I remember earlier today I was doing some research and I saw one decision that they believe will come up probably in the first year of the Trump administration to the Supreme Court, and in which, like, I'm glad that you said this, Kim, because I wouldn't have never known that term was a term or a thing, because many people don't know, like, hey, why did affirmative action just come out of the blue and now all of a sudden just now get a challenge and overturned, right? When at the end of the day, it's almost as if the University of Texas had 20% of its population black. It never reached those numbers, right? It never reached those numbers, and now you're literally crying over 1 to 3% a percent of minority population at a school that got over 30,000 kids, right? And so one of the things, and I always try to educate people, in 1948, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled Shelley versus Kramer, a court decision that enforced racial restrictive covenant on real estate. And why is that important? Why many people want to buy their houses and they want to live to keep up with the Joneses, right? And they want to go live in their nice neighborhood and houses and all that type of stuff or whatever, right? First of all, they want you out their neighborhoods, right? And so this decision, the court ruled that enforcing racially restrictive covenants violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The explanation, the court reasoned that while private agreements to restrictive property sales to certain race are not unconstitutional, enforcing those agreements by the state institutions is considered the state's action and violates the Equal Protection Clause. The impact. The landmark decision was a major step towards desegregating neighborhoods and communities across the United States. And right now, and I want people to really do this, but and really do their research to see how these cases travel from the federal district courts to these appeal courts, because at the end of the day, they wanna lose it at the local level anyway, so that they can keep on.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Their whole strategy is to keep on losing. They want you to throw the case out, and so that they can keep on getting it to the Supreme Court, so that all of these things, and I always tell people all the time, one of the things that NGAN was able to accomplish here in Dallas, many people see now in 2024, a lot of black-owned people being able to go, and you know this, Dr. King, being able to go and rent restaurants, clubs, entertainment venue in the downtown Dallas, just right here, Deep Ellum, Knox and Henderson. In 2016, 2017, NGAN was a part of a study that literally showed discriminatorial practices in these areas. And people thought that, oh, why is black folks all and Hispanics all back there in Northwest Highway? It was done deliberately. It was done deliberately in all of these historical entertainment venues, to Fiji's, all of them tore down, Brooklyn's gone, you know what I mean? And then these entertainment districts in Dallas started using the same real estate agency through, if you wanted to rent something in the Cedars, you wanted to rent something in Deep Ellum, you wanted to in inner city of Dallas, downtown Dallas, uptown, all of that. So now that we see all of these clubs and entertainment and just things that black people owning some, now that we see that, we take for granted and then say this stupid stuff like, oh, I voted for Trump because I want to make money. Man, if you don't wake up, what are you talking about? Make money, dude. They're coming after your right to be able to dispute things on your credit, your right to the information that they collect on you. There are laws that protect you. There is federal laws that says to you that you can call an agency like LexisNexis and say, freeze everything that you are collecting on me. Didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? Most people don't know that. But since you went there, what grandma used to always say, our people perish
There's a lack of knowledge. Yes. Lack of knowledge.
And so it's so in like what I saw, the number one, two things that they came and attacked. I always tell people all the time, if you want to know the Republican, let me say not the Republican, the white supremacist agenda that is going on in America, see what they are doing at the local level, in your local city, in county, throughout. Because one of the things they know, and this is how we have to get back to the basics, is all local news is national news. All national news ain't local. Because don't nobody care what was on CNN and MSNBC or none of that or whatever. They looking at Fox and NBC5 and all that type of stuff. They don't care. They don't know that stuff, right? And so when you look at the local level and you look at what is currently going on and you think about like book bans, why are they so afraid of our children reading a book that is written by a young African-American queen by the name of Amanda Gorman that only talked about we shall rise in an eloquent way? Why?
Fear.
Because knowledge is power.
Are they so afraid of us really understanding the true history of the United States and our kids, knowing that before all of these bondages that our people rised up? Why are they so afraid of sanitizing the legacy of Dr. King and Malcolm X and Fannie Lou Hamer and so many different things? And I always tell people all the time, I said, have you ever looked at our protests and the history of our protests? I want you to look at some sky view of them protests. And I told them to look at the videos of the George Floyd stuff, and I said, do you see one common denominator there? Oh, it's a very common denominator. And they say, what is it? No one could pick it out. I said, you don't see all them damn white children in that damn video? It's realization is that most of the the people that I have literally protested with, majority of them, a lot of them are white. You know what I mean? Downtown, through George Floyd, a lot of them are white. So what are they saying? Hey man, you ain't finna tell our white children all this mess. We ain't finna do all this. We finna have to change this stuff in this classroom. And they don't realize that the main way that these kids is learning this stuff is through social media and so many different things. And they learning out that their great grandfather was a racist. They not learning that their great grandfather was this wonderful philanthropic businessman that loved. They finding out that this man was a full blown racist, and they finding out the historical preference of what has happened, and particularly here in Dallas, right? And so when we look at critical race theory play its form, when we look at voting rights play its form, when we look at all of the stuff, I think that the main important thing that we're going to have to do, we're going to have to organize. Like we say, get back to the basics. Get back to that time where we could all collectively come to a common ground to have a critical discussion based on facts, because a lot of this foolishness out here is some foolishness. Like I heard somebody say, I didn't vote for Kamala because I didn't want, I don't like the fact of boys being able to play girl sport. I just want to find out, tell me the damn player in the team where this has happened. Tell me the state where this has happened. Oh, I can't tell you that. Then why are you repeating that? I don't like the fact that children can go in and get surgery without parental consent. Tell me the hospital that has happened. These are all fear-mongering tactics to get you not focused on the real core. And so they say when Trump was elected in 2016, oh, y'all didn't want us to create fake pages. So now what they do is they create these damn social media influencers, give them $1 million, and have Candace Owens online blathering out a bunch of bull crap. For a man that don't even like her. And so we sit here and ask the question, what are we doing right now? And where do we go from here? So like we said, Dr. King, where do we go from here? That's the big question of the night.
I think just keep doing what we're doing strategically, strategic planning and organizing. And read, watch the news, pay attention, massage your strategies, and just keep moving ahead, because the first shall be last and the last shall be first.
Kim, where do we go from here?
You know, I say we continue to do what we're doing, but let's be mindful and let's prep and let's plan for the worst, right? You know, hope for the best, but plan for the worst, because there is a written agenda that is directly geared toward threatening our rights to exist in this country.
Can I pause y'all and just challenge y'all? Because for many people that say continue to do what we doing, what are we doing? Because evidently it ain't getting us nowhere.
Well, I disagree with it's not getting us anywhere.
That's why I want to know. Unpack it.
I think we are getting somewhere. I think that, for me, if we change the narrative and look at all the things that black people are doing a lot of stuff. It may not be on social media. It may not be. I'm sitting here looking in a place where we're doing this interview. You know, I walk through this space. I'm right down the street. I marvel at that. I'm going to go to my own institution. You know, we have 300-some thousand people that walk through our doors. most of the people who look like me. Young people, you know, brilliant, young kids on Broadway, in film, in television. They are brilliant, they are creative, they are talented, and you can't tell the young people that I train no, because no doesn't mean no. No means maybe, later, possibility, or whatever. They're brilliant, they're articulate, they're thoughtful, they read, they know how to walk in a room and size a situation up on their feet. They're in law school, they're in med school, they're in dental school, and they believe in us. And so I think that if we can say what we're not doing and turn that into all the things that we are doing and spread those things of what we're doing, it puts us so much further ahead. Because I think we're doing, I go home sometime in the South and I look at, my brother has a church in Memphis and they building homes for people who live in poor communities. And the church is 200 or 300 people. But the people working, you know. So I just think I really do think that if we just focus up on what we are doing and build from that, it's going to be amazing. But they know that. People know what we're doing.
Well, I wasn't done because I.
Right, yeah, no, I want you.
Like don't. I'm saying don't fall apart. Don't disrupt your normal life. But I do believe that this election was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call because you and I have been in the streets. We've been in the trenches. We done been in the jails. We done been through it, right?
Yeah, I was on the other side of it.
Yeah, you was on the other side of the glass. I was on the outside of the bars. You was on the other side.
I was on the other side.
But we
yelling at you, talking about, don't pay that $5,000. Where that brick, where that blanket at? Man, she ain't paying that.
Yeah. So we've been there, right?
Yeah.
One thing I think we need to do is we really, really, really need to involve ourselves more in our community. One thing that you hear the saying, and I'm sure you've heard it over and over again, we aren't outnumbered, we're out organized. When I tell you these people, this Heritage Foundation put this list of judges up, and they've been picking them off every time. You know, they withheld Obama's appointments for, held them up to, so they
I'm
are
glad
strategic.
you said that. I'm glad you said that because people don't connect the current stuff that are going on right now all the way back to Merrick Garland not being appointed to the Supreme Court.
They've been planning this, so they have organized. Yeah, this didn't just pop up with Donald Trump. I mean, they've been planning this, and so what we need to do is also be strategic. I'm saying hope for the best, but prepare for the worst and be strategic. We have got to, one thing that I believe that has been a successful strategy against us is to pit us against one another.
Yeah.
One thing about in the 60s, I grew up in the South. I was born and raised in Memphis. And so, one thing I recognize, so I'm deep roots in the civil rights, struggle. One thing that I realized is that back then, we had each other. That was we were unified. It didn't matter where we were on this planet. I mean, in this country, Black people had one agenda, and that was to obtain their basic human rights. And when I tell you, they worked in unison all across especially the South. They worked in unison, and so that's one thing. We're splintered, divide and conquer, and I think this election was a wake-up call especially to those of us who are in this space. We need to come together, and we need to make sure. Somebody said, Black, nobody had a plan for Black men. Kamala didn't have a plan for Black men, and this person didn't have a plan for that. The thing is, do we have a plan for us?
Was she in the office?
Do we have a plan for us? And I think that's one thing that, once again, with look, hey,
You
our
must-
people.
you
I
must
mean,
been in my
seriously,
pocket for the last couple
when,
weeks.
when I tell you, without a vision, we don't have a collective vision
Why are
for our communities. And one thing, everybody marvels at Black Wall Street, right? Everybody marvels at that. Wasn't the only Black Wall Street. Everywhere there were Black people, there was a Black Wall Street. There were Black doctors, there were Black lawyers, there were Black. I mean, because we couldn't use their stuff.
correct?
So we had our own. And you see that from Rosewood to Quakertown, which is right up the street, you know, they destroyed these Black communities. But there were Black Wall Streets everywhere across this country because we had our own. And I think we've gotten so focused on integrating and all of that that we forsook our own communities. And I think we need to get back to building our communities, and we need to strategize and have one vision for our communities. Everybody, you know, that's one thing that, like I said, we're very fractured right now. And I hate to say this, but in the legal community, there are white men who have been more helpful to me than, you know, my Black counterparts. You know, if I need and white women too. You know, if I need something, you know, they'll be more likely to help me out than my Black attorney colleagues. Because we're in competition with one another.
We're fractured.
And so I think we need to work on rebuilding our collective community all across this country, because we will never, ever have a movement like they did in the 60s if we don't come together and agree on what we want as a people, because we're so fractured and we're so at odds with one another. You know, Black men are against Black women. I mean, you see the podcasts and stuff. You know, Black women are against Black men. I mean, it's just, you know, we ain't gonna get into the gang culture. I mean, you know, we're so fractured as a community, divide and conquer, and that has worked. It's worked for decades at this point, and I think we need to come together and strategize and move as a unit so that when we do go to the polls, we make a difference, because we're going to be one collective voice. And we can, you know, there's strength in numbers, and I think we also need to involve ourselves more in local politics, because when I tell you these folks had an agenda, there was a national agenda, with sheets that went out and said, hey, you run for the school board, you run for the school, but that's how they got all of these history books and everything removed. And it's not, I wanted to clear this up, because I keep hearing this critical race theory. I actually took critical race theory. You want to know when I took critical race theory?
Yeah, Tim.
At Howard University.
Okay, what was it about?
A historically Black law school.
I was also told that they switched it around.
First of all, children aren't taught theories. They just don't have the mental capacity to grasp them, right? I mean, that's just... Critical race theory is not taught in any elementary school in this country. It's not taught in any middle school in this country. It's not taught in any high school in this country. Mm-hmm. I know when I went to law school, that was the first I had ever heard of critical race theory, and it was at a historically Black university. And so critical race theory basically talks about how race is intertwined in the fabric of everything here in this country. It is real, and it's the truth. They don't want people knowing the truth. And that's why one of the first things on Trump's agenda was to dismantle the Department of Education, because knowledge is power. And they don't want, that's why they're banning books. That's why they're trying to tear down the educational system, because they don't want the people educated. They don't want the people educated. Because knowledge really is power. When you know better, you do better, right? And they don't want people knowing better. And so I think as a collective, we need to get together and figure out, what do we know? You could ask all of us, what do you want for, our community? And we'd all say different things. And so I think we need to come up with an agenda for us ourselves before we go asking somebody else, what you got for Black men, what you got for Black women. Do we know what we want? And we need to come together as a community and have a collective voice like in the 60s, I mean, they were unified. I'm sure they had their little differences here and there, but as far as the movement, they were unified in what they wanted. And so I think we can't make demands until we have a meeting of the minds.
Correct.
How can two walk together lest they agree?
Correct.
We have to come together.
And I said that. I said I hated the fact that we have gotten we can be so eloquent about talking about historical facts of so many different movements, civil rights movements, post 1940, the Black Panthers, all of these different movements. But we forget this one part that they did not do. They didn't go, hey, Reagan, what's your agenda towards? No. They said, hey, this is our agenda, brother. You're going to either be with it or you're not.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Civil rights movement. When LBJ got into office and they got the Civil Rights Act, Dr. King didn't say, oh, LBJ said, hey, give us a couple of years. We need to let the civil rights get over the hump. No, he said, no, we need that Voting Rights Act. Oh, well, I don't know if I could do it. Well, we going to be in them streets until you do it. So when we see in the modern day, when we look at the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, we look at the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, all of these things that cannot be put in place because a white supremacist agenda is literally blocking us from it, and a senator from West Virginia named Joe Manchin and a senator, I forgot that little girl name, that woman name from Arizona, Kristen Sinema. Yeah, that's her name. Literally blocked a way for us to get critical things. And many of us people will say, well, what's just about the voting rights? What is about that? When you are not protected, that right to vote is not protected. In communities like Georgia, when you look at it and you say, why we lost Georgia? Oh, well, Kamala didn't hit this and hit this. Hey, man, she was in Georgia. She didn't brought every damn body to Georgia. But what you you eliminating the one factor is that Georgia purged hundreds of thousands of people off the voting rolls. And guess what? There was nothing that the DOJ couldn't do anything about it because the laws in these states reign supreme. And so there was nothing, at the end of the day, the federal laws had not caught up with being able to make sure and update itself from an already, out-of-date Voting Rights Act that has been challenged in certain provisions of it, already struck out of it, right? And we talked about how you can weaken something, right? That also was intended to do something else, right? And so I just say to many people that are out there that is listening to it, if you are black, brown, blue, green, whatever, T's and tree, I don't care. But particularly the black folks, we have to stop waiting on politicians coming up with agendas for us. You know what I mean? The agenda should be created. And then we got to get back to the basics. Because we want a celebrity our way out of 21st century, you know what I'm saying? And I just feel like some of the actions of some of these celebrities nowadays are quite disrespectful, Dr. King, because, I remember the Nina Simones and Harry Belafontes and all of them that knew how to get their marching orders and be informed from the organizers and the policymakers and the people were here. But now our 21st century actors and activists and all them good stuff in one word are trying to lead the way. But they don't know nothing about a meet and confer agreement at the local level towards law enforcement. They don't know nothing about these school boards and these education and all these different types of things. And that's what I would say, Kim, how I would echo the words of you saying, how we get back to the basics and really get back to like, hey, yeah, we need your platform, we need your voice, but we need you to be actually with us. Because when you go on that platform, and yeah, you can say that, but you don't know how you will set us back by you going on there ill-informed about the cores of the issues, right? And so when we say to our, like, I say this for instance, I looked at the thing that our brother a couple years, Ice Cube, was trying to do, and it was a lot of great stuff, but the reality is that he didn't know how to articulate what it was,
At all.
right?
At all.
And it hurt us. In the middle of it, we understood his heart. I wasn't finna make it seem like some of the disrespectful comments that went online, like, oh, he had to do this or whatever, or he doing that to cloud chase. Like, no, you ain't finna come after bro like that, man. This dude is an accomplished actor, rapper, then did anything. But the part is somebody had to say to him, Q, bro, we need you to be with some organizers, some policy people, and some people that can help around this, that can lead this way, and then be able to use your platform like Dr. King did with Harry Belafonte and Ray Charles and so many different celebrities that said, you know what, Dr. King, I'm not going to go on Good Morning America and speak for the movement. I want them to interview you. But I'm going to come out there and stand with you when you march and be a part of it. And so the reality is that in the 21st century, that has went backwards. You know what I mean? And I know, Dr. King, that you got just a little dab to know that, because I know you have dedicated your life towards the arts and in the responsibility of the arts to have towards the movement, right?
Well, let me say that I think, and then I'll be quiet, stop preaching.
Yeah.
But I think that what King did is he established a relationship with artists as a civil rights leader. I think that has not been done with people who say that they are civil rights leaders. They look at artists who have achieved a certain level of notoriety, respect because of their work, because of their social media platforms, because of their following. And so what they do, they only use artists. When artists need leaders, civil rights leaders and voices to be a champion for us to have work and things like that, why is it that we have to, when artists of note die, that we have to raise money to bury them? We're the civil rights leaders. We're all these people. So now you want to use me for my platform. People call me all the time asking me to do something. And the first thing they tell me, they don't have a budget. You don't have a budget? You're a politician, you don't have a budget? I've been trained to do what I'm doing, but you don't have a budget. So you want me to go there, you want me to entertain your people, play some background music that you don't even listen to, and this is what I've been trained to do. So it works both ways. So
and
I'm
I think
an
we
artist.
definitely that conversation definitely has to be made and unpacked, right? And how do we get back to the basics of when it worked, right? Because they're getting back to the basics of how it worked, right? And I think they have finally got to their epic potential, because they got the judiciary, they got the legislative, they got the executive branch. And so as we concur this conversation as to where do we go from here, as we just slide this up, Kemp.
One thing I want absolutely strategic. One thing I want to make perfectly clear, and this is what moved the needle in the civil rights movement, is impacting their dollars. Okay, we as Black people have, I believe the last estimate I saw was $7 trillion in buying power. It wasn't the marches and the protests that moved the needle. It was the boycotts. And we, once again, we're so splintered. We may boycott today, we may boycott Black Friday and go spend twice that the next day. We're not consistent. And I think we need to come together, or enough of us, right, need to to be like-minded and come together. If we want to move the needle, if we want to have our rights remain intact, we need to collectively agree that there will be consequences.
Can
right?
we just wait for this? Let's do the next Black Friday, not this one. I got a couple things I need to
Right, well, I mean,
purchase.
I'm saying that's what I'm saying. People will pick a
just
day,
playing. I'm
right?
just being
They'll
kidding.
pick one day, but that's not going to move the needle. But can you imagine if trillions of dollars started recycling amongst our community? And so that would move the needle. If we take that out of this economy, they're gonna notice. They'll be like, wait a minute, you know, we ain't making the money we used to make. Now we get you want to hear what we have to say, right? So I think we need to make sure. I mean, I done marched and I done protested. My feet tired. I'll leave that for I mean that's good, right? Because we always know the protests bring attention to an issue, but what next? If we don't put any action behind that, we will continue to get what we've gotten, right? We need to get seats at the table so that we can present an organized agenda like we did that day you got arrested. When we sat in on City Hall.
Just go ahead and tell them all the dates. Come on, Kim.
we all had, were we not, I mean, but was that not a well executed strategy? Like we literally went and sat in at City Council because Chief David Brown would not meet with us. And we had an agenda. We had a 10-point agenda that we needed them to implement and some policies we needed them to put in place. And we broke it up into sections. This person gonna talk about this point. This person gonna talk about that point. We had a sit-in at City Hall. We went to the City Council meeting. We presented our agenda. Each person strategically, this person hit their point. We got caught up on my point because then they went and snatched Dominique up off the mic, so because they came at me and Dominique came to my defense, and that set a whole chain of events.
Kim always been the reason why I went to.
but we had our talking points and we had an agenda. He ended up getting arrested that day. However, it resulted. Chief Brown didn't meet with me, but he had his people call me when you were in jail. Remember? Yeah. He had his people call me and be like, "Okay, so what y'all want?" Yeah, and they actually ended up implementing some of the things that were on our list. That's how it has to be strategic. Right. We can no longer afford the luxury of operating in silos. We have to come together so that we can be a collective voice. Right. And I think that's what we're missing, even with our entertainers, right? Back during the civil rights movement, we had entertainers singing about the movement. And, now I can't even say what we singing about. It's some, but they're not mainstream.
It's not just some of them. There are a lot of them.
Yeah.
There are a lot of them. I mean, I can't say that I'm in the business, and there are a lot of things that Black artists are doing. Right. A lot. And I think, to your point, I'll be quiet, definitely. But I think what you all did strategically and things like that, and you moved the needle and things like that, that is happening in a lot of communities. With a lot of people,
and let me say this.
The possibilities are there.
I think we have so many. I think one of the things in 21st century, we have so many silos amongst things that used to be all together, right? Like used to be like, I used to as a leader in this city and organizing leader. I used to be interconnected in the 60s. If I was in the 60s, I was interconnected with the arts community and the entertainment community. I knew them, they knew us, they did this. And we're so fragmented in certain ways.
I don't agree with that. I don't think that we're fragmented. I think that the times are different. We didn't have levels of communications. What did we do? We had create our own little newspaper, or we had stamps.
So different ways that we communicate.
Black people doing so many incredible things.
Oh, absolutely.
And so wonderful. And I think that if we stop saying what we're not doing and talk about what you all just talked about and how you move the needle, that's what you all did. There are so many needles being moved. It is unbelievable. Now, is it that we know about it? Perhaps not. But some people are doing stuff in silo just because, hey, I don't want this to be. But are people buying land? They're doing crops. They're doing all kinds of things like that. And so I think it's strategic. I think we need to change our narrative, our conversation about, let's talk about the things that we are doing in our communities as a people. And then move from that point, like talking about those things that you're talking about, as opposed to saying what we're not doing and we should be doing. Because what it does, as an individual, it makes me feel not optimistic, one.
Right.
And it makes me feel like, what am I going to do? Just like, all due respect to President Barack Obama, when he went and talked to the brothers about how they should be voting, things like that. What do they feel? They feel that you're talking down to me. And you're saying these things to me as if they're not smart,
Yeah.
as if they're not articulate, as if they're not thinking individual, things like that. And so what they do, you know, we have to have a different approach. We can't go to people. I don't go to artists. I don't go to people saying to them what you're not doing or what you ought to be doing. The first thing I say is that this is what we're doing. Now, how can we move beyond this point?
Right.
We've been in we downtown Dallas in a major venue, 250,000 square feet. Started a project with $250 on my dining room table, and we're talking about a $250 million renovation. Primarily because people who look like me worked hard, cleaned toilets, washed windows, buy tickets and things like that. And when they come, when black people come, they come there with such pride. But when people who don't look like me, they come there surprised too. You know, Langston Hughes says, if you come, I'm pleased. If you don't, I don't give a damn.
Well,
Well, yeah.
You know, not to discredit anything that anyone is doing, because we've been all across this country. We've actually gone to, you know, to protest in other states, you know, to join people, you know, in their efforts. And I think that is absolutely wonderful. And I think, but if I'm looking at how this racist agenda was promulgated all across the country, when I tell you they coordinated and people went out and infiltrated these school boards, that's one thing. We don't pay attention to stuff like that. So I'm saying let's make a collective effort.
I think that's happening. I hear what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I really do think.
I'm saying, you know, to collaborate. Like everybody, you know, people over in LA are doing this. People in Memphis are doing things. We're doing things here. There are people in St. Louis doing things. I'm saying let's follow their playbook. Let's make a concerted effort to insert ourselves into these processes and into these spaces so that our voices can be heard as well.
And so that we can come up with an actual agenda.
Yeah, and come up with an actual agenda that we can present, that we want. Like when I tell you, they took over the school boards and now they have thousands of books that have been banned because they literally went. There was a document that they sent out all across the country, and
So
they
let me say
implemented
this. So you go ban a book in, you know, a library, whatever it is. Books are on. So whatever for us, for an example. So okay, so y'all gonna ban the book. So we came up with this program. It's lit, you know, and we went to all of these, went online, and selected for during Black History Month. Selected 28 great books by great Black authors, and got $5,000. And worked with college and universities and high schools to give money to students if you write an essay about this particular book. It was absolutely fascinating.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
So I'm saying again, okay, you can't stop me from reading.
Absolutely not.
Listen, if you're going to take it out of the library, which we ain't going to no way.
Right.
So what do? We take our phones.
We still should be going to the library.
No,
Dr.
I'm saying.
King.
The library is this.
Right.
This is our library now. So the library is this little phone right here. That's what the research and done in college, university, and that. So you can't tell me you're going to stop me from reading. You're not going to stop me from reading.
Dr. King, the mother at the church said that's the devil right there. That's the mother
Well,
told me something.
the
Not to
devil is
miss
very
it.
resourceful.
Look, you got the Bible right there.
The Bible is here. And what they do, they say, get your electronic device out and follow the scripture.
Follow
That's
the
correct.
scripture, yep.
So no, you cannot stop me from learning.
No,
can't
you
stop
cannot.
me
No,
from
you
learning.
cannot.
You may stop me from getting a degree, but degree doesn't have anything to do with my learning.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And so I know we have kind of run out of time, and
You're
I
going
want
to
to.
feed us today, right?
And
Yeah.
where my ox is?
I don't know about all that because
Look here, no, you bribed me to get me here.
no, we
You
ain't
he
no
bribed
no.
me. He
So
promised me
so
free
real
lane
quick,
talks to
so as I want to thank you, Dr. King, and Kim Cole for joining us, and then also Pastor Waters, who had to leave. I want to thank him. I think that the important part for the Next Generation Action Network and many people who are watching this is it's important for us to have series, not just one conversation. Tonight is not the just one just do all conversation, because at the end of the day there are so many different things that are under attack. You know, we talk about housing, education, environmental justice, so many different critical landmark decisions, certain things that are going after the core of what our people have died, sacrificed for so many different things. And one of the things of one of the priorities of the Next Generation Action Network is to make sure that our community is informed, to make sure that our community is informed at the local level of what is going on in your local city council, in your local, whether you're in a city where they're called an alderman, or in your county commissioner's court, or your state legislature. Right now in the state of Texas, in January, the state of Texas will gavel in for its session. And if many people don't know that, that's about 6 months where state representatives and your state senators and your governor create laws that will be in place for the next 2 years. And yet, what will be the version of Project 2025 in the Texas version of it? Because at the end of the day, one of the things I want people to understand, Texas has always been, historically, always been the leading state in all of these things that we are yet talking about, whether it's voter suppression, voter ID law, all of these things. Literally, it's like Texas has the largest budget over any conservative state or whatever. It's always been the nesting ground for white supremacy. If we're gonna try it anywhere, let's try it in Texas, and then let's implement it. So it's important that we stay engaged in what is going on in our state legislature in this next month, in knowing what is going to be filed, because a lot of those things that we talk about, in a number of things that people have said watch out for, are going to be at stake. But also, let's be prepared for what January 20th is going to bring to us. Now that we see, I always tell people all the time, man, you know, I don't focus on a lot of things Trump. I focus on the people that are around him, right? And I'm gonna tell you right now, the people that are around him are more scarier than just him as an individual, because that idiot don't know how to tie his tennis shoes in the morning. But those people who he have appointed as the chief of staff, deputy chief of policy, the guy that these people have an agenda. You think he don't know about the investigation of Matt Gaetz? He knows about it. He doesn't care, because Matt Gaetz has an agenda, and that agenda is bigger than just Donald Trump. That agenda, you're focusing on an individual, and you're losing the big picture because you're focusing on that one individual, when we are telling you that this stuff that we are fighting on is coming from decades of stuff. One documentary that I always point people to is the documentary The 13th by our sister Ava DuVernay, which it really, really concretely unpack Alec, the Koch brothers, and these major funders. And one of the things that people don't understand, and we talk about the Elon Musk, but Elon Musk wasn't born overnight. And his tactics and his approach was not born overnight. And as we, in these next couple of months, do everything in our power to inform you, the community, locally and abroad, as we unpack and be able to bring more people together in these conversations to really unpack these critical conversations. And that's what the Next Generation Action Network is dedicated on doing, and making sure that we continue to grow. And that's why I have to end this conversation with saying, hey, continue to support organizations like the Next Generation Action Network. Whether you are watching this and you're not even in our local community or you're across in another state, it's imperative that you find an organization who are doing the work in your local community, in your local chambers. It's not about all those people that you hearing them emails about. It's about the people that are in your local community. So support, because these local police unions and these local things that we fight against locally, they have millions of dollars. And so in order for us to be able to fight against that and to ensure that your basic fundamental rights are protected, we have to have the resources to continue to do that, and then continue to support and be a part of the events and the activities of the Next Generation Action Network. And I want to thank my staff and team who helped us put this together today. Their countless and tireless work, it makes it easy for me to be the president and CEO of the Next Generation Action Network. Until next time, I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank the people who came in present, who had the heart to come but wasn't able to come. But at the end of the day, I don't say goodbye, I say see you later.
Yeah.